All right, so welcome back, guys, to chapter 4. This is where we left off on page 127, where we're going to be learning on paying vendors and how we pay them. So there's quite a few ways that you can pay your vendors. Now, before I go ahead and get started with this on this page here, this is what happens when you are opening QuickBooks for the first time and you're in the middle of working on a current data file. So this is right here. Tells me right here at the very top, this is Imagine Photography Expenses, which is chapter 4, correct? Now, because this is chapter 4 and we were in the middle of it, right? We entered in our first vendor, and I just closed out my company file, and now I am now opening QuickBooks again, and it's going to tell me do I want to continue on with that previous working data file. If not, you just click cancel and then open up a new one. But in this case, I do want to continue working with expenses. So that's what it's going to usually happen. It's going to pop up saying here, I already opened up the previous one for you. So do you want to continue on? Then enter a password. If not, then we can cancel and do a, upload a or, restore another portable file. So in this case, we know that it is Questiva 21. Okay. And once you just go ahead and put the password in, because it's already been uploaded and updated, it's only going to take a couple minutes to just pull up the files exactly. So if you remember, this is where I left off. The accountant center will still always pop up just because that for the accountant's version that is standard. But in this case, there you go. Okay, so here, if you remember yesterday's lesson, we entered in Boswell Consulting. So here, it saved my work automatically. I didn't even have to press Control S. Okay, so remember, that's the great thing about QuickBooks is it will have an automatic save. Now, if you're in the middle of a transaction and you did not get that beep of approval or press enter or save the transaction, so if you remember, once we are done with the transaction, you have the option to either save and close or save and new. Those options is what's going to allow you to, enter your transactions, but also update the file as you go through each scenario and each transaction. So in this case, here's Boswell Consulting. They have all the information that we put in there yesterday. So that is that section there. So I'm going to go ahead and close out my vendor center. Okay. So now we can go ahead and continue on. Now there are a couple ways that you can pay a vendor, right? You can choose out of these three, right? You can record an actual manual check, or if you're doing an electronic funds transfer. So, nowadays, businesses are now looking into using things like Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, okay? A new quick and easy way to transfer money from one bank account to another. All right, we're living in a very technological world now, and it's so much easier to just, instead of having to write a check and so on and so forth and have it processed between banks, you can instantly send money, and it takes about anywhere from a couple hours to 24 hours or even 48 hours. So that's what electronic funds transfer is. It's when you try to wire money from one bank account to another. Okay, and with the apps that are available, it makes money transferring way easier. Okay. You can either do that, or you can even use QuickBooks Write a Check to manually write a check. Now, in this case, when we use the Write a Checks function, this is if you are using the Intuit's program, and when you're done, you're going to be printing these checks from your printer. Okay, and we'll talk about the details and regulations that you need to have in order to be able to do that, because there is a special paper and a special if and sometimes there's a special ink that you have to use. You can't just use regular jet ink. Okay, it has to be like the kind that doesn't smudge. So you may need to have some kind of legitimate ink for that in order for you to be able to print either at home or at an office. Okay. And then, of course, if not, and you decide to pay or owe on an account, so yes, you as a retail store, vendors will also give you generous, leeways to be able to purchase items from them, or even be they provide a service for you and they just say, I will bill you. Okay. Most cases, a lot of things such as for example, the hospital, right? You go to the hospital, you don't pay right then and there. You get billed and then you owe money. So that's the same essential idea here, is that if not, you're going to end up recording a bill, and the time comes, then you need to pay for it. So those are 3 ways that we're going to be entering and paying for those expenses, okay? And then the last one is using a credit card, okay? But a credit card is a liability, and when we get to that section, we'll talk more about it, okay? So let's talk about actually focusing on the main account, which is the checking account, where the money comes from and where to record it, okay? So here we're going to talk about using a register. So if you remember in chapter 12, right, we talked about the chart of accounts, right? And we talked about how your assets, liabilities, and your equity will have what's called registers, okay? So in this case, right, so my register right now in my checking account is this much. So if I choose, right, I don't necessarily, if I don't want to use one of the other functions, I can just simply enter the transaction in a register, right? If you remember my conversation, what is a register? Well, it's a list of all the transactions, and it tells you, well, did you spend money or did you earn money? And it gives you an account balance at that time, at that very given moment after you entered in the transaction. So in this case, this is the bare minimum that you have to at least complete in order to just make sure that you're doing your accounting correctly. Well, in this case, right, let's go ahead and talk about how I'm able to access these registers. So if you go to the chart of accounts, right, you can double click on anything that has a register, okay? This will not edit the account. It will take you directly to the register. So I just clicked on my savings register, okay? But if I were to do an expense account, it will not take me to a register. It will take me to a quick report, which we'll talk about in chapter 6. So remember, never double click your income and expenses, because it will not give you a register. They don't have registers, right? Because they close out every single transaction. Every time you put in a transaction, they close out at the end of the transaction. So there's no need to record an account balance, okay? All right, so that is one way that you can go there. It's not the go-to, but again, the chart of accounts is going to be, very, very flexible in using a lot of ways to enter in a transaction. So that's one way that you can enter a transaction using the register. Second one is if you're just only focusing on just the check register, you just go ahead and click check register right here on your banking section in your homepage, okay? And it's going to give you options. You want to do which bank account do you want to do. You want to do your checking account, money, market, savings, or journal entries, okay? In this case, we want checking account, right? So if I go ahead and click checking account, it's going to open my checking register, okay? And the last way you're able to access any register, okay, is if you go up to banking, Okay? Banking. You go up to banking, okay? And then you have use register. If you click on that, now it's going to open any register that is an asset, liability, or equity. Okay, so in this case, if I drop down this menu right here, it's going to tell me, well, which register do you want to access? Okay, so in this case, I want checking, and I click OK. All right, so those 3 ways that you can have access to registers. Okay, but primarily, if you use the one on your home page, that's only strictly for your bank account. But if you're looking in registers in general, there's only 2 ways. So either the chart of accounts or use registers on the banking menu. Okay, on the banking menu. Okay. So again, as I've mentioned before, let's take a look. Right? If you look here, it is date. It is chronological order by date. Okay, and then you can notice that there's a little description of what each transaction was. So as you can see here, we have a check written here, a check written here, a tax payment here, a bill payment here, and a bill payment here. All right, so this is another way that QuickBooks kind of organizes its thoughts and ideas, right? Depending on how you're entering the transaction in, it's going to determine, well, did you use a check? Did you pay a bill? And so on and so forth, okay? So then, and then of course you have the vendor name, and then you have, what account number you're using, a brief description, and as well as did you spend money or did you collect money in an account balance. Okay, so right now I have $11,564.34. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the very, very first transaction here, where we are going to be entering in how to use the register. So first thing I'm going to do here is, it is very, very easy. It's like entering information. You just fill in the columns, right? It's like filling out a worksheet or a Excel spreadsheet, right? You just fill in the columns accordingly, and so on and so forth. Okay. So in this case, we're going to be using we're going to be using the registers. So in this case, the best way to do this, okay? So since we know that this is true, right? When you open up a bank account, right? The first thing you're going to be receiving is an actual manual checkbook. Now, they do recommend that if you are using an actual physical manual checkbook, and you need to also record that, because it's going to come out of your bank account anyways, right? You can't just write the check and say, okay, I'm done for the day. You have to come back to this QuickBooks and update the file, because now you need to update your checking account. So they do recommend you to use the register to enter in a manual check that you have written out. And then for any check that you use Intuit for, is going to have a separate sequence number. It's never going to have the same exact number as your bank account, or the checks that come from your bank. So that's something that you need to note there, that you can have 2 separate checkbooks that go into one single account. Okay, one of them comes from QuickBooks and the other one comes from your bank. So in this case, that's what you have to note here, is that when you are using the register, you can use that as a for manual checks. You can use it for electronic funds transfer. So you just put in right here where it says number. You can put EFT to represent an electronic funds transfer. If it's a debit card transaction, you could put DEBIT, debit, right? Because that's going to represent that, oh, okay, this transaction, you didn't actually use a check number. You just used your debit card, okay? So that's what this section here really represents is, well, how are you keeping track of your payments? Well, there you go, right? If you're going to write a manual check, what was the check number that you just wrote out? Okay, because at the end of the day, your every transaction is going to have some kind of digit code to make it that much more easier to track your transactions. Okay, so in this case, let's take a look at how I'm going to be entering in my first one. So check register. So if we write a manual check or have an electronic funds transfer, okay, so we're going to use this right here. So the date is very important here. We got February 8th. Now, here is what they recommend you do. Do not type in the date, okay? Do not type in the date, even if it's like, so right now, what you notice is it's taking as of today, okay? Today is February 3rd, 2022, okay? That's fine, right? That's because QuickBooks takes the internet and it automatically takes it up to date. But the great thing about QuickBooks is you can retroactively enter in transactions. So if you're trying to bookkeep for something that happened or doing an audit trail for something that happened for a company that recorded their transactions as of, I don't know, the year 2020, you can go ahead and manually and enter every single date in. And it doesn't matter what date you put it in. If you want to put a transaction from 1998, you may do so. Okay? But the rule of thumb here is you should always use this little mini calendar on the screen. Okay? When you click on this calendar, you're going to choose the dates. Now, as you can see, right? The date that I'm choosing is February 8th for 2021. Well, I mean, this is what you can do as well, okay? I can go ahead and manually type in, right? Because I don't want the year 2022. I want the year 21, right? So I can go ahead and go backtrack and type in my dates, right? And then when I type in my date, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my calendar to be able to lock in that date. So February, right? It's going to be 8, which is going to be of 2021. So that's another way that you can do it, and it makes it that much easier instead of having to go hit that back arrow 12 times to get to the date that you need to be getting to. Or, you know, if it's a transaction that's for 2025, right, for the future, you're not obligated to have to sit there and click until you get to the year 2025. You can modify the date by typing it in, but the best way to do it is to secure your date is to use that little calendar button. Okay. All right, so there you go. February 8th. Okay, we're going to be using a manual check number, and this manual check number is check number 331. So as you can see, it's telling me 332 should be next, but should be next. No, it's going to be 331. Okay, so in this case, what you notice here is that because you've been entering a manual check in here, and as you look very carefully, right, you got 326, you got 328, and then you got 329 and 330. QuickBooks makes it's very, very smart. It figured that there's an algorithm going on, a pattern, right? So in this case, it's saying, well, you're going to write another manual check. The next one I got for you is 332. But in this case, it's supposed to be 331. Okay? And then who am I going to make a payment to? In this case, I need to make a payment to, okay, Bay Office Supplies, okay? So I'm going to type in Bay Office Supplies. Now notice this. When I type in the first letter B, right, it's going to automatically try to look for a vendor, customer, job, anybody that you already typed in to your QuickBooks to search for, is this the person that you're looking for, right? And in this case, as I keep typing, Bay Office Supply, it doesn't seem to exist. And this is another way that you can add a vendor. In this case, I probably went to the store. Okay, I drove by, went to the store, and decided, you know what? I'm gonna pick up a few supplies before I go to work. Bay Office Supplies is just a random store that I just went to. And in this case, if I go ahead and click Tab, okay, it's gonna say, we don't recognize Bay Office Supplies in your QuickBooks. Would you like to quick add, set up, or would you cancel because you made a typo? In this case, it is very crucial that you do make sure that there is no typos, because if you know Bay Office Supplies does exist and they are a company that you do frequently use, then you would say cancel because you just probably made a typo. But in this case, I've never used Bay Office Supplies. It was just a random store. I decided to just drop by and pick up a few quick supplies. So in this case, I'm going to choose either quick add or setup. So if I choose setup, it's going to give me the vendor profile, and I have to type in all the information such as phone number, address, and things like that. But in this case, I'm in the middle of my transaction. I should just complete it. So I'm just going to do what's called a quick add. Okay? Quick add. So then it's going to say, well, if you're going to quickly add this person into QuickBooks, what are they? Are they a vendor, customer, employee, or did they belong to other name? In this case, it is a store. They sold me some supplies, so they are a vendor. So I click OK. Now, we'll talk about what happens now that we quickly added Bay Office Supplies in our QuickBooks. What happens to them? They do appear on the vendor center. However, is there any details in them? No, because you do not need anything other except for just the name, okay? And especially if you just only have a quick drive-by, you don't necessarily need any other information except for just the name, right? If it's a one-time deal, don't even worry about filling in information, okay? But if it's a frequent vendor that you do use, right, it's just much easier if you can just put all the information in when you receive the bill, okay? So in this case, what kind of account am I going to be using when I purchased these supplies, right? So I went to Bay Office Supplies. So in this case, I bought some office supplies. So when I find my OFFI. So there you go, office supplies. Okay? Office supplies says it's this account right here. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click office supplies. Okay? So again, this stemmed out from my actual chart of accounts. Now, let's say I didn't have office supplies, right? And let's say this was just supplies in general, right? If it's just supplies, it's not a specific supply, I can also do a quick add as well. I can create an account at any given time. And this is the mistake that many beginner users or, people who don't really know the chart of accounts by memory, they just add a bunch of accounts in there just because they can't find an account. And this is where Chapter 12 is, well, what if I have too many accounts that are the same because I didn't know that it would belong to this account? That's where you merge them. So in this case, if I created a supplies account, right, and I realized, oh, wait, I have an office supplies account, then I would have to just manually merge those in the chart of accounts. But in this case, no, I don't want that. But if for any reason you type in supplies and you do end up saying, oh, I do have office supplies, I can actually just overwrite that and click office supplies, okay? And it will automatically pull up that account, right? So QuickBooks makes it that much more easier for you to be able to have access to everything that you need. So that's why it is so important to fill things in, because it makes it that much easier to put in your transaction. Okay, so there you go, office supplies. Okay. Now my memo here is office supplies, right? Your memo is going to be subjective to whatever your transaction is. So if I bought office supplies, I bought office supplies. In this case, I think I was supposed to write printer, paper, and internet cables or something like that. Okay. Printer and internet cables, okay? And how much was it for? Now, this is where you need to be very, very careful. In this case, right, we're not looking at the ledger like we are in accounting, right? We always refer debits as the left, credits as the right. In this case, it's backwards, okay? You're most likely going to be, so in this case, when you have a checking account, you're more likely to spend money than you are to acquire money. So in this case, that's why they put the credits first, and that's how all the registers are. It's always going to refer your credits first, and then your debits is going to be the next side, and then your account balance is accordingly. So in this case, it's working a little backwards to what we learned in accounting. Okay? But in this case, how much was my total amount? Okay? In this case, it was for the total amount of $360. Okay. Oh wait, hold on. I'm in the wrong one. It was for 28. It was for a total of $128.60. Okay. Now, here's rule of thumb. If you're trying to use this, right, and you're trying to enter in the data as quick as possible, and you like to use the shortcuts on your keyboard, or, going from one box to another. This program and Excel are two separate programs. Yes, they function very similarly, where when you enter in information, it fills it in, right? In this case, your best friend is Tab. If you press enter at any given time, you're going to validate the transaction, okay? Now, I like to use my mouse point and click and add my information in there just so then I don't accidentally press my enter button at any given time. But enter is usually reserved for when you're completely done with this transaction. That's when you can say enter. And it will give you a beep of approval if you have the sound effects. But if you remember, so if I want to move from one box to another, you use Tab. Okay? Tab is your best friend. Now, can you set up QuickBooks to say I rather have Tab to enter my transactions and use enter to move through my little windows here? Yes, you can. But in this case, it is by default that your best friend is Tab. Enter is when you are validating a transaction, where it is different for Excel, right? Enter allows you to move from one cell to another, okay? So make sure you don't confuse the two. And let's say if I accidentally enter in a transaction at any given time, you can edit the information at any given time as well, okay? Again, this is for practice purposes only. Now, can you delete a transaction? We'll talk about that when we dive into chapter 13. It's not recommended, okay? Especially when we'll take a look too as well in this chapter as well. So here you go. I entered in my transaction, and look, now my account has been adjusted. I now have $11,436.74, where before I had a previously of $11,564. Okay, so in this case, it already counted this amount here, and I have all the information saying I must have used a manual check. Okay, so that's how you use the register. So in this case, right, if I wrote a whole bunch of checks, I can just go straight to the register and just type everything in and just press enter, right? I don't need to use any other functions or any other things, because as long as this can be able to give me a quick overview of my checking account or whatever register that you're in, that's the basic things that I need. But that isn't the only reason why you're using QuickBooks. It's not the only function that you have, right? If you're paying $400 for this program, you should maximize the all the features in QuickBooks, not just only strictly use just one. You can do all of this just by using Excel. Okay? You don't necessarily, if you're just only using QuickBooks for just the registers, you could do that with Excel, like I mentioned, right? You don't need to pay $400 to do manual bookkeeping in this case, okay? But in this case, I'm not going to just show you just only the register. I'm going to show you how to write a check. I'm going to show you how to do a lot more functions in QuickBooks to make it that much more easier, okay? So that's that right there, okay? Now, I entered in my transaction. Now, like I've mentioned before, right? If let's say I entered it in and I forgot to put a description or put a little memo in there. Yes, you can edit the transaction at any given time. You can either choose, you could select this and click edit, right? And you can edit the transaction. Or, you know what you can do? The simplest and easiest way is to just go ahead and double click on the transaction. So now it's pulling up a form, right? This is a form that you can go ahead and modify information on it at any given time. You even have the split button down below if you want to do that, but honestly, it doesn't matter how you get there in regards to this. So here's this, right? You also have this split button right here, okay? That allows you to split a transaction, because in this case, right, I can buy supplies for multiple store locations. So whether you use the split button or you could just double click on the actual transaction, I'm going to go ahead and split this up, okay? Because I went to Bay Office Supplies and I bought some stuff. Well, I didn't just buy stuff for just strictly one location. I bought it for two. So in this case, right, as you can see, we got office supplies for $128.60. Now, here is the rule of thumb. Since we already placed this in the checking register, right? If you are going to enter in data such as split datas, you need to make sure that at the end of the day, it matches your total amount of $128.60. Okay? So let's take a look at how we're going to split this payment. So I'm going to split this payment by dedicating $100 to printer paper, and then I'm also going to split the $28.60 for the computer cables. Okay, now let's take a look here. So I'm going to say $100, right, was an actual office supply. And what is the memo? What did I do here? Well, I bought printer paper. Okay, all right, for who? For not particularly who, okay? So we'll skip the customer there. But I bought this for my San Jose location. Okay? And that's how you can split the payments, right? You could split it by class. And then that way when you look and run your reports, this $100 is going to be strictly only on my expenses for San Jose. And then I can put my rest of the remaining to Walnut Creek if I'd like. Okay. I am also using multiple accounts because because I wrote that I also bought internet cables, right? In this case, that is not an office supplies. That is going to be a computer, okay, and internet expense, okay? And here, QuickBooks is already quick to say, well, if you already have one designated for 100, then to match this to the total amount that you wrote your check out for, it should be the remaining of $28.60. I didn't even type that in. It just solved it for me. But if you're using multiple, and then even a third account, then you just, override it. Okay? In this case, I'm going to write internet cables. Okay? And I'm going to say, well, I bought these internet cables for my Walnut Creek location. Okay? So again, either you could go enter, it will save and create a new one, or you could go down to the bottom of your screen and you have save and close. Now, what's the difference between save and close and save and new? Save and close is save this transaction and close this current window. Okay? And if I click save and new, I will save this transaction and a new check or a new form will pop up. And in this case, I'm done with this register. So I'm going to go ahead and click save and close. Okay? Then you're going to get a warning sign saying, hey, you made changes to this transaction. Are you sure you want to save it? And I say yes. Okay? You're going to get that beep of approval. And then now it tells me here in my register, I wrote a check out for Bay Office Supplies, and I wrote my description here saying I bought printer paper and so on and so forth for $128, but it is a split payment. Okay? Any questions here? Okay, so that was entering a transaction using the register. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happened when I entered in Bay Office Supplies. So once again, if I click on Bay Office Supplies, because I did a quick add, I don't have any piece of information on them. Okay? And that's fine because, like I mentioned before, if it's a one-time ordeal where you just randomly stopped by a store, is it necessary for you to write down the address, write down the phone number, or anything at all? Do you have an account with them? No. You used cash or you used a check to pay for these supplies. So in this case, you have no linkage between this person. Okay? But it does keep track of your transactions. So as you can see, I wrote a check out, check number 331. So it does keep track of your transaction. Okay? But however, is it necessary to put in any information in regards to this vendor? No. Okay? Okay. So then let's talk about the next one, which is going to be using the actual write a checks function. Okay?
Dina?
Yes.
Sorry, I want just to ask you. Yesterday I tried to just be like create, like as in the new, same this one, but I lost. I don't know how do I start the thing to bring all this. Like where is the paper to say, like the first step. I don't know how do I grab this paper and start. Yesterday I watched your like first video, and I didn't see anything where like you just start. We have this one. We don't.
Okay.
No, not from me.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the second way that you can enter in a transaction, okay? So now that we took a look at using the registers, now let's actually use the write a checks function. So in this case, right, I have write a checks right here on my home page, right, under banking. Boom, I clicked on it and it looks just like this. It's a simple and easy form that you can utilize to, again, enter the transaction by filling out this form. This form is called the write a checks form. Okay? Now, is that the only way that you can get to this? Well, there's a couple ways, okay? You can either have access to it right here on your home page under banking. You can even go to your banking and be able to write a checks this way too, right? Right at the top, write a checks, okay? You can even go to your a chart of accounts. This is a hidden one. And for example, right, I have my checking account. I can go ahead and click it and be able to write a check this way as well. Okay. But again, this is the one that you're not really going to frequently use. Your chart of accounts is always going to be your third or last option to do it. But the most widely used is going to be right here on your home page under write a checks, or by going to the banking menu and writing a checks that way. Okay. So when I do click on write a checks, remember, Intuit also has a checkbook that you can manually create. It's not an actual physical checkbook that came from your bank account. So in this case, I don't necessarily have to put in a check number here, okay? I can choose to not even print the check on this case, right? So as you can see here, it's saying, well, this is also how you can enter in just transactions into your register in general, right? Instead of having to use the register to enter in your transactions, you can use the write a checks function to do the same things, right? So if I am writing a manual check, the next manual check is 332. If I'm using a debit card, I just type in debit, okay? If I am, using an EFT, I just put in EFT in the number. Now in this case, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm actually going to be using QuickBooks's, checkbook that allows me to print out. So in this case, what I'm going to actually do is I am actually going to print this number later. Okay? What does that even do? So at the very top of the window, you have print later. So if I go ahead and click that, that means I can save until the end of the day or until I'm done with entering all my checks and save it to the very end to print them out. Now, rule of thumb, when you print out your checks, what are the criteria that you need to have? Well, the most important one is a signature, okay? Because again, you can create the check all you want, but at the end of the day, what makes it valid is the signature. And we'll talk about that after we accumulate all this. Now, it also makes it that much more easier because as a regular business, right, you're not going to be writing a check one at a time. In this case, if you want the most efficient way, what you're going to do is if I have a set of bills I need to pay, I'm just going to go through each and every single one of them, write a whole bunch of checks, save to print them later, and then compile them all up, and then set up my printer and just have all the checks print out at the very end. Right? That's the most efficient way to be able to pay all your bills all in one go and print all the checks at one go, sign them all, send them out. Okay? That's the most efficient way. It is very inefficient if you're just going to write one check, print it, save it, send it, and then do the next one. Okay? So that's what the main function of using this is for in case you want to print it later. Now, if I want to print this check out later, notice this, the number is gone because it's to be printed. So I can assign the check numbers later, right? I can say, when I'm about to print them, I can assign the number saying I want this to be this check number, and then everything that's listed on there will come in order after that. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose to print this later. Now, in this case, you want to also double confirm that this is the correct account that you're looking at. I'm paying out from my checking account. Okay? Okay, and then now I need to plug in the date. The date's the same. So what you notice is that once you change that date in one area, it will change all of them to that date that you're currently working on. So in this case, it is February 8th of 2021. Okay, and then now what do you want to do? You have two choices that you could do. You could either type in the number here, or you can wait to save it and just type your amounts here, and it will automatically fill this section for you. Okay, so again, the thing about QuickBooks is if you miss a part of information, it will catch it for you. So in this case, I don't necessarily need to type in my amount here. I can do it down here, and it will calculate it up there for me. Okay. So the person that I'm going to be writing a check out to is going to be Orlando Properties, okay? Orlando Properties, which we are going to be making a payment for rent. So Orlando Properties. Here it is. We already have them as a vendor in our list because we pay them monthly rent. So in this case, I can go ahead and press that. I can use tab to enter this vendor in as well. Okay, but I do recommend you to select it just because what if I had Orlando Properties and then Orlando Landscaping, Orlando this, and if I have a multiple vendor name, but they do different jobs or something like that, then you don't want to accidentally select the wrong one. So in this case, I recommend that you do use your mouse and select it, but you can use the tab key if it is correct. And there's only one person, you can use the tab key to enter this in. So what's my memo going to be? Your memo could be rent, monthly rent. Okay? And then notice this, when I entered in rent or Orlando Properties, the first thing it says is you're paying rent. Because if you remember when we did the vendor profile and we added information in there, we linked an account to that person. And in this case, so that means every time I use Orlando Properties, that tells me I must be paying rent. Okay? And now I need to figure out how much my rent is going to be for. And it tells me that my rent is for $3,200, okay? Now, in this case, right, you see this memo right here? The more information that you add on here, it's going to be, when you run your reports, it's going to give you those details in regards to those transactions. Okay, so that's that there. So if you want to, you can use the regular computer functions, such as, the control C, which is to copy. So I can do that same function here. I can do control C and then be able to paste it in here by using control V, right? Because that is a Windows thing. Okay, so I can make it that much more easier and quicker for me to just go ahead and fill in these bubbles. Another thing too is I actually made this payment for the San Jose location. Okay, I paid rent for San Jose. Okay, and once everything looks good, right? See, if I just typed in 3,200, boom, it filled it up at the top for me. Once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close, right? You're going to get that beep of approval. Now let's check this out. If I go to my check register, right, and making sure I'm in my checking account, I click OK. It's going to show up that I paid Orlando Properties, right, same day with a to be printed check. And here it took out the money, so now I am down to $8,200, okay? So again, by entering any transaction, whether using the register or using the write a checks function, it's going to update the account because we selected that we're using the checking account to pay for this rent, okay? Any questions there?
No.
Okay. So let me see. All right. So let's go ahead and now let's look at how, for instance, so this is how we pay our vendors at time of whether service, purchase, or whatever, right? Now, what if I decided to have services be complete for me, but the vendor decides to say, don't pay me now, I'll bill you, okay? So this is where we're going to be taking a look at using this function right here in QuickBooks. This is going to be creating our accounts payable account. So again, accounts payable is going to be what money we owe to other people, okay? So a bill, right, means that I owe people money. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Enter Bills. Now, that is the first way that you can do here on QuickBooks, right? Is you couldn't automatically go to your home page. Now, in this case, there are a total of 6 different ways that you can actually enter in a bill. Okay? First one's just the home page. Okay? Second one, if I don't want to choose it that way, I can go to my vendors and I can enter in a bill this way. Okay? Okay, if I don't want to use my menu bar, so that's the second way. Any way that you get into the vendor center, right? Any way that you get to the vendor center, where it's the home page icon bar or the menu bar. Okay? Here, I can go ahead and click on the person that I'm going to be using, and I can right click on them and be able to enter a bill this way. Okay? I can even go up to the top of the window, click, not this one, sorry. You go to new transactions, I can enter in a bill that way. I can even select a person once again and click manage transaction and enter a bill in this way. All right, this one doesn't say enter bills, this one just says bills. Okay, so that's so far 5 ways that we can enter in a bill. Okay, the last way that you can enter in a bill is going to be using the bill tracker. So in 2018, bill tracker was something that was new to QuickBooks. So what is a bill tracker? Well, we can locate it here on my icon bar. This is set by default, but you can also find it at the very top of the vendor center as well as if you go to vendors, your very top one is the bill tracker. Okay. So if I were to go to my bill tracker, let's take a look at what my bill tracker actually does. This keeps track of all the bills that you owe. Okay, so in other sense, right, instead of having to go through the QuickBooks vendor center and clicking on every single individual that you owe a bill to, you can easily, quickly access all of that information by clicking the bill tracker, and it will appear up every single bill that you owe. All right? And that's what the cool thing, and it gives you a little summary at the top saying how many bills you owe, how many are outstanding, how many have you paid. Okay? All right, and here, if you go down to the bottom, you also have managed transactions, and you're also able to enter in a bill this way. Okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and go there because I'm already there. So that's 6 different ways you can go and enter in a bill. You got the home page, the menu bar. When you enter the vendor center, you have new transactions. Right click on a vendor, manage transactions down at the bottom. Or you could go to the bill tracker and you have manage transactions at the very bottom. Okay. All right. So that's entering a bill. Okay. So here, let's go ahead and take a look at what my transaction is going to be. So when I'm in the enter bills transaction, I am going to be using I am going to be entering in this person right here. So this way, again, this is a form. This is the bill form. You're going to enter in each bubble accordingly. So first one is going to be your vendor. Okay, so the vendor that we're going to be taking a look at is okay, we're going to look at Ace Supply for the same date. Okay, so Ace Supply. So here they are, Ace Supply. Okay. So again, because I've already entered in them in there in the first place, it automatically filled that information. I'm going to double confirm that the date is correct, right? It's February 8th of 2021. Reference number. This reference number is going to be given, right? When you receive a bill, you're going to see a billing code or a billing number, and this one is going to be number 2085. Okay, and this time we're going to be charging $360. Again, do I need to type it up here? No. Okay. But it'd be nice to go ahead and put in everything else. So in this case, what am I buying? I am buying photo materials for Jerry Perez. Okay? I am making a purchase for a particular customer. His name is Jerry Perez. So if I go down below here, you have office supplies, which in this case is not what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be using the account called cost of goods sold. Okay, so Jerry Perez, and we're going to be using the cost of goods sold. Okay. So in this case, I can type in cost of goods sold. Here it is. Okay. And it is going to be for $360. Memo once again, if you wrote it up here, I can just copy this and paste it down here. Now, is it necessary to put in memos? If you're going to carry this and bill it to your customer, you should be able to write descriptions so then they know what they're buying from you, okay, and what the price was. But this is the more detail that you have for each transaction, the better outcome you have, right? So this is where we're going to be using the customer job, okay? In this case, I am making a custom purchase for a customer. So therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to pay for this customer. I'm going to have the customer pay for it. So that means I'm going to pass this bill along to my customer to pay for it, right? And that's what this means right here is when I am using a customer/job, I'm assigning this expense to this particular customer. So then later, right, when I actually invoice them, which we'll talk in chapter 9, we'll see how that works, okay? So in this case, I am going to be billing Jerry Perez. And what class does Jerry Perez belongs to? Walnut Creek, okay? Now everything looks good, date looks good, the amount looks good, all right? Everything looks good. I can go ahead and save and close. Okay. Now, once you see here, because we're on the bill tracker, automatically I have a new bill that I've just entered. Okay. Now, let's say I accidentally forgot to put in the bill number. Okay. Yes, you can edit any transaction at any given time. You could do that by going here and I can just double click on it. It will pop up the bill. Now, what if I decide to not use it this way and I use the enter bills, right? How do I search my bill there? Well, we'll talk about using the find button, but in this case, right, best rule of thumb is if you just entered in a bill, how do I locate where that bill is? Well, simple thing is you know who the person you received the bill from, right? It was from Ace Supply. So you could click on Ace Supply and boom, there is your bill, right? And then you can also locate that by clicking transactions and clicking on bills. It will show you that the first bill that you did or the latest bill that you did was to Ace Supply. So again, you can locate your transactions there. And once again, what if I forgot to put in the bill number? Well, I can always locate my bill. So here I'm under Ace Supply, here it is. I can double click on it and say, well, I made a typo. What if it wasn't 2085? What if it was 2083 instead of 5, right? We are humans. We're not perfect. We will make typos here and there. This simple fix is easy. You just go in and fix it. You don't need to ask your accountant for permission unless they restrict you from making any changes. But in this case, again, we're humans. We make a lot of this mistakes is due to us entering in the information, right? We're the ones that's typing in the information. So if it's wrong, it's because we entered it in wrong. Okay, so I can make changes to this. If it's not 2085 and 2083, I just go in, double click on that bill, and I am going to choose to fix it. Okay? All right. And if I don't, then I just click save and close. All right. So here is the rule of thumb. If you have created a bill, let's see what the next section is going to be. If you created a bill, you need to follow this line out to the point where you need to pay the bill. Okay? And in this case, if you need to pay the bill, that's how you are going to pay it, by using the pay bills function. Now, hey, what if I am lazy and I don't want to pay the bill using that, and I want to use write checks? No. You absolutely cannot use write checks to pay for bills. Okay? Reason being is because QuickBooks is very straightforward, right? If you enter in a bill, you use the bill payment. Okay? It will not recognize or make a linkage between the two. Now, however, what it will do is, so if I were to write a check, and let's say I was going to do it for a supply, right? Nope, sorry, this is checking. And I'm going to pay it to a supply. It's going to give you an error message saying, hey, are you trying to pay for this bill? And if you are, go to bill payment. Okay? It will stop you right here. Now, back then, with the previous programs, it never made a reference to this, but in this case, it will stop you and say, hey. If you're trying to pay a bill, do not use write checks. Go to bill payment, and you can go ahead and pay it there. Okay? So that I'm going to go ahead and go to pay bills. So it stops you from it stops you from writing a check and to pay off a bill, and it takes you to pay bills. Okay? So please do not use write checks to pay for a bill. It will refer you to this area right here. It will take you back to the very function here. Okay? Now that we entered in a bill, we were able to locate it, and if we need to make changes to it, you can. Any questions there? No? So, okay, let's talk about how we pay our bills by using the bill payment function, or the bill payment window, okay? So again, we are able to pay a bill right here on our home page, right? But that also means that any way that you're able to enter in a bill, you'd be able to pay your bills, right? You got right here on the home page. Menu bar, you got pay bills right here, right? Pay your bills, okay? You even have that on your bill tracker, right? If I go to my bill tracker, I can go down to the function down here and be able to say I received a bill payment. Or in this case, let's see, I'd be able to right click. In this one, I have to right click this one. So I go bill, right click, pay. Okay. And then, of course, you have it on your vendor center, right? Top of the page, new transaction, right click, and manage transactions. You can pay your bills the same exact way that you can enter them. However, with pay bills, you have one more additional way that you could also pay it, right? So if I were going to click pay bills, right, and let's pull up that last bill that we just entered in. So here, a supply, right? At the top of the bill window, you have pay bills right here. So this is the 7th way you're able to pay your bill. By, once again, going at the top, click on pay bill. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just go to the function here and just click pay bills in general, and you're going to get this window here. Okay? This pay bills window pulls up every single bill that is currently outstanding in your vendor center or whatever, just your accounts payable account. Okay? Now notice this, right? Every time I enter in a bill, it's going to increase my accounts payable. How do I know that? Well, let's take a look at my chart of accounts, because here, accounts payable is a liability, 2,000. Accounts payable. I just entered in my transaction, right? That I just entered in that I owe $360 to A Supply, and I previously owe $142 to Wong and Son, right? Here it tells me my accounts payable is right here, right? And the only way to be able to decrease the accounts payable is by using a bill payment, because again, we talked about this, right? This is directly correlated to entering accounts payable. If you're increasing accounts payable, the way to decrease it is using a bill payment or pay bills. Okay, so here we go. Now, can I choose? And this is where I can actually select which bills I can pay. You're not obligated to just pay only one person. You can pay all of them, obviously using separate checks. But in this case, right, I can choose the bills that I want to pay. So especially if you're a small company, right, you're going to notice that maybe you might be tight on money. And if you're tight on money, then you can't just go ahead and just pay all the bills that you owe. You kind of have to be selective. And here it shows you right here that you have a bill, okay, and it tells you the date that it's due, okay? So in this case, this one's due on the 18th of February, okay, for A Supply, all right? And it tells you the amounts that are outstanding and so on and so forth. You can even toggle, right, and filter out your bills accordingly. You can filter them out by vendor, right, by specific vendors. You can even filter them out by when the due dates are. In this case, it's straightforward. I'm going to pay both of them today. So in this case, what you have to do is you do need to manually select which bills you're making payments to. Okay, so in this case, I'm making a payment to all of them. Okay, so both A Supply and Wong and Son. Now down here, what you're going to do here is you can either choose to either go to the bill and so on and so forth. All right, but let's notice this, right? If you remember, my bill for A Supply, right, I was given terms. If you don't remember, well then you need to go to your bill. So I'm going to go ahead and select my A Supply here, and I'm going to go to my bill. If I go to my A Supply bill, it tells me here that I get 2% if I pay within 10 days. If not, the whole entire bill is due in 30. So if I make a payment before the 18, then I can take a 2% discount. But if not, then my bill is due in March. Okay? By knowing that piece of information, well, let's take a look. My bill payment that I'm going to be paying is going to be on I believe the 10th of February, okay? We're going to make a payment on the 10th of February, okay? So, if I'm going to make a payment on the 10th of February, that means I should receive that discount, okay? Now, if I'm going to be paying on the 10th, right, so that's down below, when am I going to pay it, right? I'm going to pay on the 10th. So therefore, since I know this fact, now you have to be aware of your bills. You need to go through them yourself to note that, do I get a discount or not? Because you have to manually enter in that discount. And if you pay them off and they look at your bill and say, well, you overpaid, they're just going to send you some money back. Okay? So in this case, you have to be very attentive to all the bills that you're paying. So that's why they allow you to have quick access to go to that bill just to double confirm what you're actually paying. Okay, so in this case, down below right here, we have this section where you can set discounts. In this case, it tells me I get a 2% 10 net 30, but I have to claim it. So in this case, I'm going to click set discount. Okay. So here's the discount. Now it's telling me, okay, well, you're getting a discount from Ace Supply. This is the amount of discount. So it already calculates it for you without you having to do it yourself. Okay? And now it's asking you, well, since you're making a payment, you're going to receive the discount of the 2% discount, which is going to be $7.20. You can override that if you think that amount is incorrect, but most cases they are more correct than you are. Okay? And now you're going to be setting up the discount account. In this case, my discount account number is going to be purchase discounts, right? Because that's exactly what we're doing. We got a purchase discount. And what class does it belong to? It belongs to San Jose. Okay? And now that I've set my discounts, I click done. Now it's going to apply that $7.20 here to this bill. So therefore, you're going to be ending up paying for that bill for $7.20 less. Okay? So in this case, it's down to this much amount. All right? So again, you have to manually apply it. It will not notify you, note you, give you a, wave here, hey, you have a discount pending. No, you have to be responsible to be able to recognize it. So that's that there. You have to manually collect that credit or that discount right there. Okay. So then now we're going down below. We're paying on the 10th. It's coming out of our how are we paying? Normal form and best way to keep track of making payments to your vendors is through a check. Okay. And are you going to print them now? I'm going to print them to be printed. Okay, so that means later. I'm going to assign the numbers later. And it's going to come out of my checking account. Once everything looks good, I'm making a total payment of 2 bills. One for $142 and the other one for this remaining of $290 something dollars. So therefore, everything looks good. I can go ahead and proceed to pay selected bills, right? You should get a beep of approval, and now it says, oh, okay, so okay, hold on. I forgot to select Wong and Son. Okay, so there you go. Now it says here, you just paid your bill. So this is pending in the to be printed checks. Okay, and I'm going to show you how you can do that later. Okay, so I'm going to click done. All right, I'm going to go ahead and quickly make a payment to Wong and Son because I forgot to select them here. So Wong and Son, the 10th check to be printed, and so on and so forth. So, right. All right, and done. So then, now that I saved my stuff to be printed later, all right, how do I retrieve or print those items? And what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that when we come back from the break, okay? So any questions in regards to everything that we saw today or up to now?
No, not for me.
Oh, good.
Okay, so,
I'm good.
all right,